The company's lawyer stood up and said, "Your Honor, Ms. Reeves was terminated due to performance issues. She could not keep up with meetings. She missed instructions. She was, frankly, a liability." He said it like he was describing a broken printer, something that stopped working and needed to be replaced. I sat at the table and watched his mouth move, the way I have watched mouths move my entire life. Because I am deaf. I have been deaf since birth, and what that lawyer did not know, what nobody in that company ever bothered to find out, is that I read lips, not casually, not approximately, perfectly, every word, every whisper, every conversation they thought I could not hear. I heard all of it, and I wrote it all down. My name is Claire Reeves. I am 31 years old. I was born profoundly deaf. No hearing in either ear. Never had it. Never will. My parents found out when I was 14 months old, when I did not turn toward the sound of my mother's voice. They took me to a specialist. The specialist said, "She will never hear." My mother cried. My father asked, "What can she do?" That question shaped my entire life. Not what can't she do? What can she do? My parents enrolled me in a school for the deaf when I was 3. I learned sign language. I learned to read. I learned to write. But the thing I got really good at, the thing that became my secret weapon, was reading lips. My mother was the one who started teaching me. She would sit across from me at the kitchen table, exaggerate her mouth movements, and say words slowly until I could recognize them from the shape of her lips alone. By the time I was 10, I could follow a conversation across a room. By 15, I could read lips through a window. By 20, I could catch whispered conversations from 10 feet away if I had a clear line of sight. Most hearing people do not realize how much information their mouths give away. Every vowel has a shape. Every consonant has a pattern. Words are not just sounds, they are movements. And I learned to read those movements the way other people read books. I went to college, accounting degree, graduated with honors, got hired at a mid-sized firm called Whitfield and Associates. They had 40 employees, 3 senior partners, and a reputation for handling high net worth clients. I was their first deaf employee. They made a big deal about it in the company newsletter. Whitfield embraces diversity. They gave me a nice desk, a computer, and an interpreter for meetings. The interpreter lasted 3 months. After that, they said the budget did not cover it anymore. They told me I could follow along with written notes. The notes were always late. Sometimes they never came at all. I was expected to sit in meetings, stare at a screen, and figure out what was happening from a few bullet points that arrived in my inbox an hour after the meeting ended. So I adapted. I read lips instead. I watched every person in every meeting and I understood every word they said. Not most words, every word. The partners did not know this. They assumed I was sitting there lost, nodding politely, understanding nothing. That assumption was their biggest mistake. Here is the thing about being the person everyone assumes cannot hear. People stop filtering. They stop being careful. They say things in front of you that they would never say in front of someone they thought was listening. I was invisible in the most useful way a person can be invisible. I was a camera with no red light. About 6 months into the job, I started noticing things. One of the senior partners, a man named David Mercer, would have conversations with the CFO, Alan Briggs, in the corner of the conference room after meetings. They always waited until most people had left. They always spoke quietly. They always glanced at me, the deaf girl in the corner, packing up her laptop, and then continued talking like I was furniture. I was not furniture. I was reading every word. The first conversation I caught was about a client named Greenhill Properties. Mercer told Briggs to adjust the depreciation schedule to reduce the client's tax liability by roughly $400,000. Briggs said, "That is not a legitimate deduction." Mercer said, "Make it look legitimate." I went home that night and wrote it down. Date, time, who was present, what was said, word for word. I wrote it in a notebook I kept in my bag, a plain black notebook with no label on the cover. Over the next 18 months, I documented everything. 17 conversations between Mercer and Briggs involving 3 different clients, falsified depreciation schedules, inflated business expenses, offshore account transfers disguised as consulting fees, a total of approximately $2.3 million in tax fraud across 3 accounts. I wrote every conversation down, date, time, location, participants, exact words. I also noted the lip movements that were ambiguous and cross-referenced them with documents I had access to as part of the accounting team. Every entry was verified against the actual financial records. I was not guessing. I was auditing. I never reported it. Not while I was there. I want to be honest about why. I was afraid. I was a deaf woman in a hearing world, working at a company that had already shown it did not value my presence. If I reported fraud, who would believe me? The deaf girl who could not keep up with meetings, the one whose interpreter got cut 3 months in. I had no credibility in that building. I had a notebook and the word of a person they had already decided was a liability. So I waited. I documented, and I kept my mouth shut, which given the circumstances was not hard. Then, 22 months into my employment, I got called into Mercer's office. Briggs was there. The head of HR, a woman named Pamela Hart, was there. They told me I was being let go. Performance-based, they said. I was not meeting expectations. I was not integrating with the team. My communication challenges were creating inefficiencies. Communication challenges. That is corporate language for she is deaf and we do not want to deal with it anymore. I signed the termination letter. I packed my desk. I took my notebook home. And then I called a lawyer. Her name was Diane Ochoa. She was a disability rights attorney who had handled 3 ADA cases against major firms and won all 3. She took my case on contingency. When I showed her the notebook, she went quiet for a very long time. Claire, she said, this is not just a wrongful termination case anymore. I know, I said. We filed 2 claims. The first was wrongful termination under the Americans with Disabilities Act, failure to provide reasonable accommodations, discriminatory treatment, and retaliatory dismissal. The second was a separate filing with the IRS, forwarding my documentation of the tax fraud to the Criminal Investigation Division. The hearing for the wrongful termination was scheduled first. That is the one I want to tell you about. Whitfield's attorney was a man named Paul Garrett. He was the kind of lawyer who wore French cuffs and spoke in long, rehearsed paragraphs. He presented the company's case confidently. Performance issues, communication gaps, an employee who, unfortunately, could not meet the demands of a fast-paced professional environment. He said the word unfortunately like he was reading a sympathy card. He also presented my performance reviews, which had been consistently mediocre. I had been given scores of meets expectations in technical work and below expectations in communication and teamwork. The reviews were written by Mercer. Diane let him finish. Then she stood up. She started with the ADA violations. She showed that my interpreter had been removed after 3 months. She showed that meeting notes were consistently late or incomplete. She showed that I had made written requests for accommodations, captioning software, a dedicated note-taker that were denied or ignored. She presented email records showing HR acknowledging the requests and then doing nothing. Then she said, Your Honor, I would like to present evidence that goes beyond the termination itself. Garrett objected. Your Honor, this is a wrongful termination hearing, not a fishing expedition. The judge overruled. I will allow it. Proceed. Diane handed the judge a copy of my notebook. All 73 pages. She explained what it was, how I had documented conversations using lip reading, how each entry was cross-referenced with internal financial documents. Garrett's face changed. He leaned over and whispered something to Mercer. Mercer's face went white. Diane read 3 entries out loud. The Green Hill Depreciation Scheme. An offshore transfer for a client called Bright Star Holdings. A conversation where Briggs told Mercer, if anyone finds out about this, we are both going to prison. And Mercer replied, nobody's going to find out. The only person in the room is the deaf girl. She repeated it. The only person in the room is the deaf girl. The courtroom was completely silent. The judge looked at me. Ms. Reeves, you documented these conversations through lip reading? I signed my response. My interpreter, whom Diane had hired for the hearing, translated. Yes, Your Honor. I read lips. I have been reading lips since I was 3 years old. I understood every word they said. They assumed I could not. The judge looked at Mercer, then at Briggs, who was in the gallery, then at Garrett. Counselor, would your client like to respond to these allegations? Garrett asked for a recess. The judge denied it. I have heard enough on the termination matter, the judge said. The evidence before me demonstrates a clear pattern of discriminatory conduct. The interpreter was removed. Accommodations were denied, and the plaintiff was terminated not because of performance, but because the respondents assumed her disability made her incapable of doing her job. Apparently incapable of understanding what was being said around her. He paused. They were wrong on both counts. He ruled in my favor on the wrongful termination, full back pay, damages, and a penalty for ADA violations. The total was significant, but that is not what mattered. What mattered was what happened next. 3 weeks after the hearing, Mercer and Briggs were contacted by the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. My notebook had been forwarded. An audit was initiated. Within 4 months, both men were indicted on multiple counts of tax fraud. The total across the 3 clients was $2.3 million. Whitfield and Associates closed its doors 8 months after my hearing. Mercer took a plea deal. Briggs went to trial and lost. I was contacted by 2 law firms offering me a job. I took the one that had a full-time interpreter on staff, captioning software in every meeting room, and a managing partner who said during my interview, "We do not hire you despite your deafness. We hire you because the way you see the world is an asset." That was 3 years ago. I still carry a notebook in my bag. Old habit. I still watch mouths in meetings. But now the people in the room know I am watching, and they are very, very careful about what they say. I think about Mercer sometimes, about what he said. The only person in the room is the deaf girl. He was right about one thing. I was the only person in the room, but he was wrong about what that meant. He thought it meant I was nobody. It meant I was the only witness. If you are listening to this, and you have ever been underestimated because of a disability, because of how you look, because of what people assume you cannot do, remember this: they are not watching you, but you are watching them. And the things they say when they think nobody is listening are the things that will undo them. Keep the notebook. Write it down, every word. Because one day you will walk into a room where they have to listen, and when that day comes, you will have every single page. My mother looked me in the eye at Thanksgiving dinner and said, "This house will be yours, sweetheart. You are the one taking care of it." I believed her. I believed her for 6 years, $147,000 and 72 monthly payments. I believed her right up until the moment the lawyer read her will and said my brother's name instead of mine. My name is Lucia. I am 28 years old, and this is the story of how my own mother and brother stole 6 years of my life and $147,000, and how I got it back in a courtroom. I grew up in a small house in Gardendale, a working-class neighborhood where everybody knew everybody and nobody had much. My mom, Patricia, raised me and my brother Dante, mostly alone after my father left when I was 4. She worked as a receptionist at a medical clinic. She was not poor, but she was always one emergency away from poor. Dante was 3 years older than me. He was the golden child, good-looking, charming, the kind of person who could talk his way out of anything. He dropped out of college after 1 semester, moved to another city, and spent his 20s bouncing between jobs and girlfriends and apartments he could not afford. He called Mom when he needed money. She always sent it. I was the other kind of child, the responsible one, the one who stayed. I graduated from community college with an associate degree in bookkeeping. I got a job at a small accounting firm. I lived at home until I was 22 to help Mom with bills. When I finally moved out, I rented an apartment 6 blocks away so I could come over every day after work. When I was 22, Mom told me the house was in trouble. She had refinanced twice during the recession, and the payments had ballooned. She was 3 months behind on the mortgage. She was terrified of losing the house she had lived in for 30 years, the house where she raised us, the only thing she owned that was worth anything. I said I would help. I did not say I would take over the payments, but that is what happened. Gradually, month by month, first I covered 1 payment because she was short, then 2, then it became the routine. I paid the mortgage. She paid the utilities and groceries. We did not put it in writing because she was my mother and I trusted her. "This house will be yours, sweetheart," she said. She said it every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every time I wrote that check. "You are the one taking care of it. When I am gone, it is yours." She said it in front of Dante, too. He never objected. He never offered to help. He just nodded and poured himself another drink and changed the subject. 6 years, 72 payments, $147,000. I have the bank statements, every single one. Mom got sick 2 years ago, lung disease. She declined fast. I took care of her. I cut my hours at work. I drove her to appointments. I cooked her meals. I slept on the couch in her living room for the last 3 months because she was afraid of being alone at night. Dante came home for the last 2 weeks. He sat by her bed. He held her hand. He posted photos on social media with captions like, "Nothing matters more than family," and "Cherish every moment." He got 143 likes on the photo of him holding her hand. I was in the kitchen making her soup when he took it. Mom passed on a Thursday morning. I was there. Dante was asleep in the guest room. The will was read 4 days later. I expected to hear my name. I expected the house. Instead, the lawyer said, "The property at 1422 Gardendale Avenue is bequeathed to Dante Michael Reyes." I looked at the lawyer. I looked at Dante. Dante did not look surprised. He did not look uncomfortable. He looked prepared. He had known. I said, "There must be a mistake." Mom told me the house was mine. The lawyer said, this is the most recent will, signed 18 months ago. 18 months ago, right around the time Dante started calling Mom more often. Right around the time he started visiting once a month instead of once a year. Right around the time Mom started acting strange when I brought up the house. She changed the will while I was paying the mortgage, while I was driving her to the doctor, while I was sleeping on her couch. I went home that night and sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment for 2 hours. I did not cry. I was past crying. I was in the territory beyond tears, where everything is very quiet and very clear, and you can see exactly what happened because the fog of trust has finally burned away. I hired a lawyer the next morning, a woman named Priya Sharma, who specialized in estate disputes. She was direct. She looked at my bank statements, my text messages, my calendar, showing every doctor's appointment and every overnight stay, and she said, "We have a strong case, but I need to ask you something first. Are you prepared to take your brother to court? Because this will get ugly." I said, "It is already ugly." We filed a claim for unjust enrichment and constructive trust. Priya argued that my payments created an implied ownership interest in the property. She also argued that Dante had exerted undue influence over our mother to change the will in his favor. Dante hired a lawyer named Victor Sosa. His argument was simple. The payments were voluntary gifts from a loving daughter. There was no written agreement. The will is valid. Voluntary gifts. $147,000 in voluntary gifts from a 22-year-old bookkeeper making $36,000 a year. The hearing was set for 3 months after Mom's death. I showed up with Priya and 2 binders. One contained 72 months of bank statements showing every mortgage payment. The other contained text messages. Priya presented the financial evidence first. She walked the judge through 6 years of payments. She showed my income during that period. She showed that the payments represented between 30 and 40% of my take-home pay every single month for 6 years. Then she presented the text messages. There were dozens. Mom texting me after a payment, "Thank you, baby. This house is yours. I mean it." Mom texting me when I asked about putting my name on the deed. "Soon, sweetheart. I just need to sort some things out first." Mom texting me on Christmas. "You are the best daughter a mother could ask for. This house is your inheritance." Priya read 7 of them out loud. Each one was a promise. Written, time-stamped, undeniable. Then she presented the final piece, the email. I had not known about this email until Priya found it during discovery. It was sent from Mom's email account to Dante's 14 months before she died. It said, "Dante, your sister has been paying the mortgage for 5 years now. She thinks the house is hers. When I am gone, the will says it is yours. Do not tell her. Let her keep paying. When I die, act surprised." Priya projected it on the courtroom screen. She read it out loud, slowly. "Do not tell her. Let her keep paying. When I die, act surprised." Dante stared at the table. His jaw was clenched. His lawyer was writing something on a pad, but I could see from his face that whatever he was writing did not matter anymore. The judge looked at Dante. "Mr. Reyes, were you aware of this email?" Dante's lawyer tried to object. The judge silenced him. "Mr. Reyes, were you aware?" Dante did not answer for a long time. Then he said, "She was my mother. She wanted me to have the house. She also wanted your sister to pay for it," the judge said, without knowing she was paying for something that would never be hers. The judge ruled in my favor. He imposed a constructive trust on the property, recognizing my financial contributions as creating an equitable ownership interest. He ordered the house to be sold and the proceeds divided, with my share calculated to include full restitution of the $147,000 plus interest, plus a portion of the equity I had helped build through 6 years of payments. Dante got less than a third. His lawyer did not appeal. After the ruling, Dante caught me in the hallway. He said, "You know, Mom would not have wanted this." I looked at him. "Mom wanted me to pay her mortgage for 6 years and then give the house to you. I do not think Mom's judgment is something either of us should be relying on." He had nothing to say to that. The house sold 2 months later. I used my share to put a down payment on a small condo, 2 bedrooms, good light, a kitchen where I cook for myself now, instead of cooking for a mother who was planning to betray me while I stirred her soup. I do not hate my mother. I want to. Sometimes I try to, but I cannot. She was complicated. She was weak. She loved Dante more than she loved me, and she did not have the courage to say it out loud. So she said the opposite and hoped I would never find out. If you are listening to this, and you are the responsible child, the one who stays, the one who pays, the one who shows up, please hear me. Get it in writing. Every promise, every payment, every agreement. Love your parents. Take care of them, but protect yourself. Because the people who take advantage of you the most are not strangers. They are the ones who say, "I love you," while they plan to take everything you have built. Trust is not a contract. Put it on paper. The designer's lawyer pointed at my suitcase and said, "Your Honor, this woman sews dresses in her living room. She has no brand, no trademark, no business license. She is not a designer. She is a seamstress." He said the word seamstress, the way someone says nobody, like it was a category of person that did not count. I sat there with my hands folded, wearing a dress I had made myself, and I let him finish. Because inside that suitcase were 20 years of proof, and sewn into the lining of the very dress the designer was wearing to court, if you knew where to look, were my initials. My name is Marta. I am 55 years old. I came to this country from El Salvador when I was 23 with a sewing machine, $200, and my grandmother's patterns folded inside a Bible. For 32 years, I have sewn. That is what I do. That is all I have ever done, and I am very, very good at it. I started in a garment factory, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, sewing buttons and hems on dresses I could have designed better in my sleep. The pay was minimum wage. The supervisor yelled. The machines broke. But I learned the American market, what women wanted, what fabrics held up, what cuts made someone feel beautiful. After 5 years, I started taking orders on the side. Word of mouth. A neighbor wanted a dress for a wedding. Her friend wanted one for a christening. Then a co-worker's daughter needed a quinceañera gown. One dress led to two, two led to 10, and within a few years I had a small but steady clientele. Women who wanted something handmade, something that fit perfectly, something nobody else would be wearing. I worked from my apartment. I had a sewing room, which was really just a corner of the living room, with good light and a table I built from plywood and sawhorses. I pinned fabric to the walls. I kept my grandmother's patterns in a wooden box, and I kept a notebook, a detailed notebook, the kind my grandmother taught me to keep, where I documented every single dress I made. Each entry included the date, the client's name, the measurements, a hand-drawn sketch of the design, the fabric type and source, and a photograph of the finished dress on the client. I taped the photos in with clear tape. I numbered each dress. Over 20 years, I made 411 dresses. Every single one is in that notebook, and every single one has my initials, M.R., Marta Reyes, sewn into the inside seam of the left shoulder, a tiny embroidery, almost invisible, in thread that matched the fabric. My grandmother did the same with her dresses in El Salvador. It was a tradition, a signature, a way of saying, I made this. This came from my hands. About 2 years ago, a woman came to me through a referral. Her name was Vanessa Laurent. She was in her 40s, well-dressed, confident. She said she was a fashion consultant and wanted 3 custom dresses for a private event. She gave me the specifications, colors, lengths, fabrics. She paid $3,000 for the 3 dresses, which was my highest commission at the time. I made the dresses. She picked them up. She seemed happy. I never heard from her again. 8 months later, I was at the dentist's office, flipping through a fashion magazine, when I saw it. One of my dresses, on a model, in a full-page editorial spread. The caption said, "Exclusive design by Vanessa Laurent for her debut collection, Threads of Heritage. Retail price, $15,000. $15,000 for a dress I had been paid $1,000 to make." I turned the page. There was another one. And another. All 3 of my dresses photographed professionally, credited entirely to Vanessa Laurent. No mention of me, no mention of a seamstress, nothing. I went home and sat in my sewing room for a long time. I looked at my notebook. I looked at the entries for those 3 dresses. Dress number 389, 390, 391, my sketches, my fabric notes, my photographs of the muslin fittings. Then I thought about the initials, M.R., sewn into the inside left shoulder seam of each dress, in thread that matched the fabric, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. I called a lawyer. His name was Eduardo Vega. He worked out of a small office above a bodega, and he charged what I could afford. He took the case. We filed a lawsuit against Vanessa Laurent for copyright infringement, fraud, and unjust enrichment. Vanessa's attorney was a man named Richard Holt from a firm that represented fashion brands. He was dismissive from the start. In the initial filing, he called my claim baseless and described me as a home-based seamstress with no intellectual property protections. The hearing was set for 5 months later. I spent those 5 months doing what I always do, sewing, but I also spent every evening organizing my case, my notebook, my photographs, my fabric receipts, the magazine spread, everything. The day of the hearing, I brought my suitcase, not a briefcase, a suitcase, the kind with wheels that you take to the airport. Inside were my notebooks, all of them, going back 20 years, the magazine, and printed photographs of every dress Vanessa had claimed as her. Own. Vanessa arrived looking like she had stepped off a runway. Tailored suit, designer bag, heels that clicked on the marble floor. She sat at her table with Holt and 2 assistants and looked at me the way people look at something they have already decided is beneath them. Holt presented Vanessa's case. He argued that she was a creative director who conceived the designs and outsourced the construction. He said, I was a contract laborer, hired to execute someone else's vision. He called it standard industry practice. He showed mood boards Vanessa had created, color palettes, fabric swatches. He argued these proved she was the creative force behind the dresses. Eduardo stood up. He was calm, quiet, the opposite of Holt in every way. He opened my suitcase. He placed the notebooks on the table, 20 years of them. He opened to the 3 entries for Vanessa's dresses and showed the judge my original sketches, drawn months before Vanessa's mood boards were created. He showed the fabric receipts from a supplier in the garment district, dated before Vanessa had contacted me. He showed my photographs of the muslin prototypes, time-stamped on my phone. Then he showed the magazine editorial, side by side with my sketches. The dresses were identical, not inspired by, not similar to, identical. Because they were my dresses. Holt tried to argue that the sketches proved nothing. Anyone can draw a dress, he said. Eduardo smiled. Your Honor, we would like to request that the court examine the physical dresses in question. Ms. Laurent wore one of them to a gala last month. She was photographed in it, and we believe the dress itself contains evidence that resolves this matter. The judge looked at Holt. Do you have access to the dresses? Holt conferred with Vanessa. After a moment, he said, the 3 dresses are in my client's possession. The judge ordered them produced for examination. A recess was called. When the dresses arrived, delivered by a courier in garment bags, Eduardo asked permission to examine them. The judge granted it. Eduardo put on cotton gloves. He picked up the first dress. He turned it inside out. He found the left shoulder seam. He held it up so the judge could see. There, in the inside seam, in thread that matched the emerald green silk, were 2 letters, M.R. He checked the second dress, M.R. He checked the third dress, M.R. He turned to the judge. Your Honor, these initials are the maker's mark of Marta Reyes. She has sewn these initials into every dress she has made for the past 20 years. Her notebooks document this practice across 411 garments. He looked at Vanessa. Ms. Laurent did not design these dresses. She bought them, removed the labels, and sold them as her own. The proof is literally sewn into the fabric. Vanessa stood up. Her face had changed. The confidence was gone. She looked at Holt. Holt was looking at the table. Your Honor, Holt said, we would like to request a continuance to. Denied, the judge said. I have seen enough. She ruled in my favor. Full damages. Vanessa was ordered to pay restitution for the profits from all 3 dresses, $45,000, plus additional damages for fraud and misrepresentation. The judge also referred the matter for investigation into whether other designers' work had been stolen in the same way. After the ruling, Eduardo and I stood outside the courthouse. I was holding my suitcase. He was holding the notebooks. 20 years of notebooks, he said. Your grandmother taught you well. She taught me to sign my work, I said. She said, Marta, if you make something beautiful, put your name on it, not for pride, for proof. I still sew. I still work from my living room, but now I have a website. My daughter set it up for me. The first page says, Handmade by Marta Reyes. Every dress signed. Every stitch mine. If you are listening to this and you create things with your hands, with your mind, with your heart, sign your work, document it, photograph it, date it, keep the notebook, because there will always be people who want to take credit for what you have built, and the only thing standing between your work and someone else's name is the proof that you were there first. My grandmother knew that. She sewed her initials into dresses in a small village in El Salvador 50 years ago. I sew mine into dresses in a small apartment in the city today. The tradition continues, the proof survives, and the work speaks for itself. Her lawyer held up my photograph and said, Your Honor, this image is a landscape. Anyone with a camera can take a photograph of a mountain. My client is a content creator with 2 million followers. The plaintiff is a freelancer with a website nobody visits. He said it like numbers determined ownership, like popularity was the same as originality. I was sitting at the table with a laptop, a hard drive, and a feeling in my stomach like I had swallowed a stone, because the woman across from me had built her entire brand on my work, and she was about to find out that I was inside the photographs themselves. My name is Joanna. I am 26 years old. I am a photographer, not the kind who shoots weddings and senior portraits, though I have done that too when the rent was due. I am a landscape photographer. I travel to places most people will never see. Mountain ridges at 4 in the morning, frozen lakes before sunrise, desert valleys where the light bends in ways that do not look real, and I photograph them. That is my life. That is my art. I have been taking photographs since I was 14, when my grandfather gave me his old Nikon film camera and said, "The world is more beautiful than people think. Go prove it." I spent my teenage years hiking trails and sleeping in my car and waiting for the light to do something worth capturing. I went to art school for 2 years before I ran out of money. I did not graduate, but I never stopped shooting. I built a small portfolio website, nothing fancy. I posted my work on social media, where I had about 8,000 followers, mostly other photographers and nature enthusiasts. I also sold prints through an online shop. On a good month, I made $1,500. On a bad month, I made $300. Landscape photography is not a career that makes you rich. It is a career that makes you tired and sunburned and grateful. About a year ago, I was scrolling through social media when I saw one of my photographs on someone else's account. A woman named Kelsey Voss. She had 2.1 million followers. She posted lifestyle content, travel content, and apparently, my photographs. The image was one I had taken in Patagonia, a mountain reflected in a glacial lake at dawn. I had woken up at 3:30 in the morning, hiked 2 hours in the dark, set up my tripod and waited 45 minutes for the light to hit the peaks at exactly the right angle. It was one of the best photographs I had ever taken. Kelsey had posted it with the caption, "Chasing light in Patagonia. Sometimes the world just takes your breath away." No credit, no tag, no mention of a photographer, just her name and a caption that implied she had taken it. I looked at her account more carefully. I found 2 more of my images, one from Iceland, a waterfall surrounded by basalt columns, one from the Dolomites, a cabin on a ridge with fog rolling through the valley below. Both posted as her own work, both with captions suggesting she had been there. She had seen it. She had captured it. Then I found something worse. She was selling prints, my photographs, on her website as fine art prints, $65 each. The Patagonia shot, the Iceland waterfall, the Dolomites cabin, all available in 3 sizes, all credited to Kelsey Voss. I felt sick, not angry at first, sick, like someone had walked into my home and taken something I could not replace, because that is what a photograph is to a photographer. It is not just an image. It is a morning you will never get back, a place you stood that nobody else was standing, a moment of light that existed for 90 seconds and then was gone forever. And she had put her name on it. I sent her a direct message, polite, professional. I said I was the photographer, I owned the copyright, and I asked her to remove the images and stop selling prints. She did not respond. I sent a follow-up. Nothing. I sent a third message. Nothing. I filed a DMCA takedown request with the platforms. The images were removed within 48 hours. Kelsey reposted them the next day from a different account. That is when I hired a lawyer. His name was Marcus Bell. He was a copyright attorney who had handled cases for independent artists before. He took one look at my metadata, the EXIF data embedded in every digital photograph containing the camera model, serial number, date, time, GPS, coordinates, aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, and said, "This is the most open and shut case I have ever seen." We filed a copyright infringement lawsuit against Kelsey Voss and her media company. Her attorney was a man named Peter Langley, who represented influencers and content creators. His defense was creative, I will give him that. He argued that landscape photographs are generic representations of natural scenery and that copyright does not protect commonly available views. He actually said, with a straight face, that anyone standing in the same spot with a camera could have taken the same photograph. Marcus let him make his argument. Then he connected my laptop to the courtroom display. He started with the metadata. He showed the EXIF data from each photograph. Camera, Nikon Z7 II. Serial number matching my registered equipment. Date and timestamps corresponding to my travel itinerary. GPS coordinates placing me at the exact locations. He showed my flight records, my hotel receipts, my rental car agreements, all matching the dates and locations embedded in the image files. Then he showed Kelsey's social media history during those same dates. On the day I was in Patagonia, Kelsey was posting Instagram stories from a hotel pool in Miami. On the day I was in Iceland, she was at a product launch in Los Angeles. On the day I was in the Dolomites, she was at a music festival in Austin. She was not in any of those places. She was never in any of those places. But Marcus was not done. He saved the best for last. "Your Honor," he said, "I would like to direct the court's attention to Exhibit 7. This is the original full-resolution file of the Patagonia photograph." He zoomed in, past the mountain, past the lake, to a small building on the far shore, a research station with glass windows that caught the dawn light. He zoomed in further, into the reflection in one of those windows, and there I was, a small figure, standing on the opposite shore, Camera on a tripod, my red jacket, my hiking boots, my silhouette reflected in the glass of a building half a mile away. The photographer is inside the photograph, Marcus said. Ms. Chen is literally present in the image Ms. Voss claims to have taken. He showed the second photograph, the Iceland waterfall. In the mist spray near the base, caught in a shaft of morning light, was the shadow of a person holding a camera, my shadow, consistent with the angle of the sun, at the time recorded in the EXIF data. He showed the third photograph, the Dolomites cabin. In the window of the cabin, barely visible at normal resolution but clear when enlarged, was the reflection of a woman with a camera bag on her shoulder, standing on the ridge path. Me, in every photograph, not as a subject, as a ghost, an accidental signature left by the physics of light and glass and water. Langley asked for a recess. The judge denied it. Kelsey was looking at her phone. She would not make eye contact with anyone. Her lawyer was writing something on a notepad, but his pen was not moving. He was just holding it against the paper, staring at the exhibit on the screen. The judge ruled in my favor. She awarded full damages for copyright infringement, plus additional penalties for willful violation and commercial exploitation. Kelsey was ordered to remove all of my images from every platform, destroy all prints in her possession, and pay restitution for every print she had sold. The total was significant enough that Langley asked if they could arrange a payment plan. After the hearing, I sat outside the courthouse on a bench with my camera bag beside me. Marcus came out and sat next to me. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Like I got my mornings back," I said. He looked confused. Every one of those photographs cost me a morning, a real morning, a 3:30 alarm. A cold hike, an hour of waiting for the light. She took the mornings and put her name on them. Now they are mine again. I still shoot. I still travel. I still wake up before the sun and hike to places where the light does things nobody expects. But now, every time I set up my tripod, I think about that reflection in the window in Patagonia. A tiny figure, barely visible, standing on a shore at dawn with a camera. That is me. I was there. And no amount of followers or stolen captions can change that. If you are listening to this and your work has been stolen, your art, your writing, your music, your ideas, fight for it. Document everything. Keep your files. Keep your metadata. Keep the receipts that prove you were there. Because the truth is not always loud. Sometimes it is a reflection in a window that nobody notices until someone zooms in far enough to see it. Your work is yours. Your mornings are yours. Do not let anyone take them. The woman sitting across from me in that courtroom was wearing a black dress and a gold necklace my son had given her 3 months before he died. She was 24 years old. She said she was carrying his baby. She said he had changed the beneficiary on his military life insurance to her name. She said she was the love of his life, and every single word was a lie. My name is Angela. I am 50 years old. My son, Corporal James Dwyer, was 23 when he was killed in Afghanistan. He was the best person I have ever known. And the woman who was trying to take his death benefit had met him exactly 5 months before he deployed. Let me tell you about James because you need to know who he was to understand why what happened in that courtroom mattered. James was born stubborn. He came out 2 weeks late, and the doctor said, "This one is going to do things on his own schedule." She was right. From the day he could walk, James did everything his own way. He did not follow. He did not take shortcuts. He went straight at whatever was in front of him, whether it was a math test, a football game, or a broken lawnmower in the garage. He enlisted in the Army at 18, the day after his high school graduation. I did not want him to go. I begged him. I cried. I told him there were other ways to serve, other ways to make a difference. He looked at me and said, "Mom, this is what I am supposed to do." And when James said something like that, with that quiet certainty in his voice, there was no point arguing. He trained at Fort Benning. He deployed twice. He never talked about what happened overseas. Not really. He said the food was bad and the heat was worse, and the guys in his unit were the best people he had ever met. Oh, Martin, that was all he would give me. But I could see it in his eyes when he came home. Something had shifted. Something heavy had moved in. Between deployments, James met a woman named Kayla. She was a bartender at a place near the base. She was pretty. She was charming. She knew exactly how to make a 23-year-old soldier feel like a hero. They dated for 5 months. James called me once during that time and mentioned her. He said, "She is nice, Mom." That was it. Not, "I am in love." Not, "She is the one." Just, "She is nice." I knew what that meant. James used specific words when he meant something. Nice was not a word he used for people who mattered. James deployed for the 3rd time in September. He was killed in November. An IED on a road outside Kandahar. His squad leader called me. I I remember the wallpaper in the kitchen. I remember the clock said 2:47. I remember thinking, this is the phone call every military mother prays she never gets. James had a service members group life insurance policy. $400,000. I was the beneficiary. He had named me when he enlisted at 18, and he had confirmed it before every deployment. It was standard procedure. You update your paperwork, you name your beneficiary, you deploy. James named me every time, every single time. 3 weeks after James was buried, with full military honors, at the cemetery where my father is also buried, I got a call from the insurance administrator. Someone had filed a competing claim. Kayla. She submitted a beneficiary change form, allegedly signed by James 2 weeks before he deployed. The form named her as the sole beneficiary. I could not breathe. I sat on the kitchen floor and held the phone and could not breathe. I knew it was fake. I knew it in my bones. James would never have changed that form without telling me. We talked about it specifically before every deployment. It was our ritual. He would call me and he would say, "Mom, the paperwork is done. You are on everything. If something happens, you are taken care of." He said it every time. It was how he said "I love you" without saying "I love you." I could not afford a lawyer. I was a medical billing clerk, making $38,000 a year. My savings were gone. I had used them for the funeral because the military death benefit does not cover everything people think it covers. I called James's best friend, Sergeant Ryan Kowalski. Ryan had served with James on all 3 deployments. They were closer than brothers. I told Ryan what was happening. He went quiet on the phone for a long time. Then he said, "Mrs. Dwyer, I am coming." Ryan flew in from Fort Campbell 3 days before the hearing. He stayed at my house. He slept on James's bed, in James's room, surrounded by James's trophies and posters and the flag I had not been able to fold properly since the funeral. The night before the hearing, Ryan told me something. "Mrs. Dwyer, James made a video before the last deployment. He made all of us make one. It was a thing our squad did. We called them just-in-case videos. You record a message for your family in case you do not come back." James made his on his phone and gave a copy to me. He said, "If anything happens, make sure my mom sees this." Ryan had kept the video on a USB drive in his go bag for 2 years. He had not given it to me earlier because he said he was not sure I was ready. But now, he said, I needed it. He played it for me on his laptop. James was sitting on his bunk. Tan uniform. Dog tags hanging. He looked tired but calm. He looked at the camera and said, "Hey Mom, if you are watching this, then I did not make it back, and I am sorry. I am sorry for every time I made you worry. I am sorry for every Christmas I missed. I am sorry I could not be there to fix the garbage disposal like I promised." He smiled, that crooked smile. "I want you to know a few things. First, I love you. You already know that, but I want it on record. Second, the insurance is in your name. I confirmed it yesterday. I will confirm it again before we roll out. It has always been in your name, and it will always be in your name. Do not let anyone tell you different." He paused. "Third, and I need to say this because I have a feeling about it, if Kayla tries anything, do not believe her. She has been asking about the insurance since our second date. I am not. Stupid Mom. I know what she is doing. I told her the policy is in your name, and she got upset and stopped talking to me for 3 days. That told me everything I needed to know." He looked straight at the camera. "Mom, that money is for you, for the house, for your retirement, for whatever you need. I earned it, and I earned it knowing it was going to you. Nobody else, just you." He paused again. "I love you, Mom. I will see you when I see you, and if I do not see you, I will be waiting." The video ended. I did not sleep that night. I sat in James's room and held his dog tags and watched the video 4 more times. The hearing was at 9 in the morning. Kayla was there with a lawyer she had found somewhere, a man named Brett Coulter, who did family law on the side. She was wearing the black dress and the gold necklace. She was visibly pregnant, or at least appeared to be. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue and told the judge that James had changed the beneficiary because he wanted to start a family with her. Coulter presented the change form. It had James's signature, his service number, his date of birth. It looked official. I had no lawyer, but I had Ryan. The judge allowed Ryan to speak as a witness. Ryan introduced himself. He stated his rank, his service record, and his relationship to James. Then he said, "Your Honor, Corporal Dwyer made a video before his last deployment. He gave me a copy and asked me to present it if there was ever a dispute about his wishes." He connected the USB drive to the courtroom display. James appeared on the screen, tan uniform, dog tags, tired eyes, crooked smile. The courtroom heard everything, the love for his mother, the confirmation about the insurance, and the warning about Kayla. "She has been asking about the insurance since our second date. I am not stupid, Mom. I know what she is doing." Kayla's face drained of color. She stopped dabbing her eyes. Coulter set his pen down. The judge paused the video. She looked at Kayla. "Ms. Brennan, Corporal Dwyer specifically mentions you by name. He states that you inquired about the insurance policy early in the relationship and reacted negatively when told you were not the beneficiary. Do you have a response? Kayla looked at her lawyer. Her lawyer looked at the table. No, Your Honor, Coulter said. The judge ordered a forensic examination of the beneficiary change form. 2 weeks later, the results came back. The signature did not match James' known samples. The form had been filled out using information available in documents Kayla had access to while dating James. The notary on the form was Kayla's cousin. The judge ruled in my favor. The $400,000 was awarded to me, as James had intended. Kayla was referred to the district attorney's office for investigation into fraud and forgery. After the hearing, Ryan and I sat on the courthouse steps. He was still in his dress uniform. I was holding the USB drive in my palm like it was a piece of James. He knew, I said. He knew she would try this. He knew a lot of things, Ryan said. He was the smartest guy in the squad. He just did not brag about it. I asked Ryan to come inside, to James's room, to sit with me for a while. He did. We sat in that room and did not say much. Two people who loved the same person, sitting in the space he left behind. The money is in a trust now. I used some of it to pay off the house, like James wanted. The rest is for later, for whatever comes. I do not think about it much. Money is just money. It does not replace the phone call at 2:47. It does not fill the chair at Thanksgiving. It does not fix the garbage disposal. But it was James's. He earned it, and he earned it for me. If you are listening to this and you are a service member, please record a video, write a letter, tell someone you trust what your wishes are. Because the people who try to take what you earned are counting on silence. They are counting on the fact that you will not be here to speak for yourself. Speak anyway. Leave your voice behind, because when you are gone, your words are the only thing that can still protect the people you love.